Are non-adversarial proceedings for taking testimony from witnesses on the following issues. 1, whether supplier consolidated billing is legal under the Public Utility Code and Commission regulations. 2, whether supplier consolidated billing is appropriate and in the public interest as a matter of policy. And 3, whether the benefits of implementing supplier consolidated billing outweigh any costs associated with implementation. To guide but not limit discussion, the Commission included a list of questions with the secretarial letter provided to parties by notice dated May 14, 2018. The hearings are being video streamed live on the Commission's website and transcribed by a court reporter and recorded. Interested persons are welcome to submit written reply comments after the En Banc hearings by Friday, August 24, 2018, referencing docket number M-2018-264-5254. Reply comments can be mailed to the Commission at attention Secretary Rosemary Chiavetta, Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission, Commonwealth Keystone Building, 2nd floor, 400 North Street, Harrisburg, PA 17120. Reply comments may also be filed electronically through the Commission's e-file system. A few housekeeping matters for those here in Harrisburg. Hearing room 1. Please take note of the exits in case of an emergency. Restrooms are located in the atrium level near the cafeteria. At this time, I call upon Chairman Brown, Vice Chairman Place, and Commissioners Coleman, Sweet, and Kennard for any opening remarks which they would like to make. Chairman.
I want to thank Chief Judge Rainey. I'm going to call upon the commissioners to give some comments, starting with Commissioner Coleman.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. Delighted to have you here today. I'm going to be very brief. We're here to hear from you today, not for us to be speaking at great length here from the bench, but I appreciate all of the comments that have been submitted and appreciate your testimony here today.
Thank you. Commissioner Sweet.
I know it will be shocking, but I will not have any opening comments in the interest of time, and certainly echo Commissioner Coleman's statement.
Commissioner Kennard.
Pretty much the same, Madam Chairman. Thank you all for coming here today and your participation. Your comments thus far have been very informing. We remain curious about the benefits offered by supplier consolidated billing and pledge to keep an open mind with respect to developing workable solutions. We are here to listen. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Place.
Thank you very much. I'm also grateful for everyone's attendance today and the comments that have been received to date. I remain fully cognizant of the legal and operational challenges before us. Change is never easy, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. What I hope to get out of this is to consider paths that may allow us to move forward slowly, but remain prudent and deliberative in our consideration of protections of fundamental customer protections that have been in place in this Commonwealth for many years and have served us well. The question for me today, the goal perhaps, is how can we do this in an operationally effective and economic way with clear responsibilities and roles that serve customers even better than we do today. So I look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me also say I want to thank the various parties that are here testifying today. I know we have a great mix of people, entities that are representing the suppliers and the consumers, and we do appreciate you coming here today. I know that, as the other commissioners stated, I also look forward to hearing from each entity and their comments that would assist us in our deliberations concerning the supplier consolidated billing. We know it's a long history on this issue. The consideration by not only this commission, but I know in the deliberations also when the General Assembly was talking about different issues. Pennsylvania has invested about $2 billion+ in the rollout of advanced metering and distribution of infrastructure over the past 8 years. We see many benefits from this investment, including increases in reliability, increased access to dynamic price generation and distribution rates, opportunities for distributed energy investment, and better quality electricity. As a commissioner, one of my key platforms has been to harness the most value from these continued investments by our EDCs. As I stated above, we have realized benefits, but I will continue to consider opportunities to further leverage the investments made in our state electrical grid. Therein lies my interest in considering supplier consolidated billing. I know that value-added services are slowly growing in availability throughout the state. Services like home house audits, smart thermostats and demand responses, and others, and further supported by the deployment of advanced meter infrastructure. However, my interest in the supplier consolidated billing revolves around the opportunity to move the market into the next generation of value-added product offerings. With that said, I continue to see concerns with implementation of this proposed model. It remains to be seen how supplier consolidated billing can be economically implemented while upholding each and every consumer protection provided under the statute, regulations, and orders. Of paramount importance are issues concerning terminations, payment arrangements, and customer information security. Therefore, I look forward to all the testimony today and at our upcoming meeting that will be held in July as well to help educate myself on this issue of supplier consolidated billing. So thank you very much. We'll turn it back to Chief Judge Rainey.
Thank you, Chairman, Vice Chairman, and Commissioners. All witnesses at today's proceeding are to have completed the hearing report form or the green sheet. In response to a Commission secretarial letter dated March 27, 2018, the parties filed initial written comments with the Commission. Those written comments are part of the record in this proceeding and are posted on the Commission's website. Regarding today's proceeding, the parties were directed to have sufficient copies of any written testimonies and exhibits that they wish to make a part of the record here today. Those testimonies and exhibits will be marked by me and admitted into the record. So that I do have some written testimonies that were provided to me, and I will then take the opportunity presently to mark those and move those into the record so that we have the written testimony of the EGS Coalition for Supplier Consolidated Billing, which we will mark as EGS Coalition for SCB Statement Number 1. We also have the testimony of Advanced Energy Management Alliance, which I will mark as Advanced Energy Management Alliance Statement Number 1, which we will also recognize, and also the testimony of low-income advocates, which I will mark as low-income advocate statement number 1. I move all of those testimonies into the record. They are admitted as a part of the record in this proceeding. We will receive testimony of witnesses in 2 panels this afternoon. The first will be an electric generation suppliers and energy services companies panel, followed by a consumer advocates panel. There will be a break in between the 2 panels. The witnesses must refrain from discussion of any matters that are the subject of a contested proceeding pending before the Commission. I ask that each witness speak slowly and clearly into the microphone so that their testimony can be heard and accurately transcribed. For the sake of time, witnesses are asked to briefly summarize or highlight their position on the supplier consolidated billing issues. The witnesses are to proceed in the order that their names appear on the agenda. The witnesses are to state their name, title, for whom they are employed, and on whose behalf they are appearing in this proceeding. The witness is to then proceed with his or her testimony. The amount of time afforded for testimony from each group of witnesses appears on the agenda. We will use flashcards to keep time. A yellow card means there is 1 minute left for the group of witnesses to conclude their testimony, and a red card means that the group of witnesses has 30 seconds left to conclude their testimony. The commissioners will have the opportunity to pose questions after the testimony of each panel. We will now proceed in taking testimony. The first group to present testimony is the EGS Coalition for Supplier Consolidated Billing, and the first witness is Ms. Karen Mowry. Ms. Mowry?
Good afternoon, Chairman, Vice Chairman, Commissioners, Your Honor, and representatives of ACMO. I'm Karen Mowry from Eckert Siemens, here today on behalf of the EGS SCB Coalition, supporting the implementation of supplier consolidated billing as an option that consumers may choose in the retail market. At the outset, we thank you for the opportunity to participate in today's hearing. We appreciate the time you're devoting to gather important information about SCB. We have provided to you and the court reporter copies of a slide deck that contains many of our key messages. However, given the time constraints, we don't intend to go slide by slide through the deck, but may refer to individual slides and otherwise offer it as a reference guide for your later use. The coalition members are NRG, Just Energy, Direct Energy, IGS, and NG. For these suppliers, SCB is already business as usual. Together, they send a total of 2.6 million supplier consolidated bills each month and collectively have 65 years of experience providing SCB in other markets. In Pennsylvania, they currently serve over 500,000 mass market shopping customers. You'll see that we have brought an all-star lineup today. Brief bios of the panelists are included on slide 4. The company executives that are with us, and they will be testifying in the order they're seated to my left, with Greg Leffler, Duncan Stiles, Tammy Wilson, Andreas Varela, and Mike Stark. The essential elements of SCB as envisioned by the coalition include 1, preservation of all existing consumer protections. 2, enhanced supplier qualifications. 3, the full purchase of utility receivables. And 4, utility disconnection for non-payment. Before turning over the presentation to these industry experts to discuss SCB in greater detail, I'll briefly address the Commission's legal authority. Under the Competition Act, the Commission has both express and implied legal authority to mandate SCB, and no provision in the Public Utility Code restricts the Commission in any way from exercising that authority. Section 28043, which mandated the unbundling of generation, transmission, and distribution, expressly states, quote, "The Commission may require the unbundling of other services," end quote. 20 years ago, when presented with restructuring settlements signed by utilities and consumer advocates, as well as litigation proposals presented by suppliers, the Commission correctly read that language as enabling it to direct the implementation of SCB. Other provisions of the law further support the Commission's authority. For instance, the only functions that are carved out to remain as monopoly services are transmission and distribution. The law also gives customers a choice of how they are billed. In addition, the law allows the Commission to designate an alternative default supplier, which would necessarily entail the provision of consolidated billing services by a supplier. And throughout the Competition Act, the Commission is charged with creating a competitive generation market where customers have choices. Opponents have argued that the enactment of Chapter 14 after the Commission's prior approval of SCB somehow now raises a barrier to implementation. Importantly, nothing in Chapter 14 precludes SCB. The coalition has proposed that EGS's offering SCB be required to comply with the consumer protections that are set forth in Chapter 14, and under the law, the Commission is authorized and in fact obligated to require such compliance. It's also important to remember the purpose of Chapter 14's enactment. Fundamental consumer protections have existed through Commission regulations dating back to 1978. The purpose of Chapter 14 was to give utilities the tools they need to conduct effective collection activities. Therefore, it should not be viewed as a barrier to SCB. As to arguments regarding the ability of utilities to terminate service if the EGSs are fully purchasing their receivables, Chapter 14 simply authorizes termination for non-payment without any regard to whether the utilities are owed money. I hope this summary was helpful in conveying our belief that the PUC, without a doubt, has the legal authority to move forward with SCB. And I'll now turn the presentation over to our experts, starting with Greg Leffler.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you, Commission, for your time today. I want to share a perspective with you on how we see customer expectations with regard to how they interact with energy changing in our business, and also how we have to adopt the way that we operate in order to be able to meet those expectations going forward. Traditionally, our industry has viewed our customers as a consumer of a kilowatt hour, and we have organized our businesses accordingly. We focus a great deal of time and energy on reducing cost to acquire, cost to serve, becoming more efficient, so that when a customer looks at an ordered list of suppliers sorted by cost per kilowatt hour, that our company's logo appears favorably in that list. But the future of retail energy is about so much more than this. We need to begin thinking not just about how to provide low cost, but how we maximize the value that organizations like ours can deliver to customers to help them meet their needs. To illustrate this example, I want to share a personal experience from another industry that I believe has recently gone through a similar transition. Many years ago, it's my view that my cell phone provider viewed me as a consumer of a cell phone minute or a text message or a megabyte of mobile data. And they devised a product offering that was communicated to me in those terms. To be an effective consumer of that product, I had to become very educated on how their business, and in some cases even their infrastructure, was architected. I had to understand roaming boundaries, free nights and weekends thresholds, what carriers my friends and family were on, how many megabytes it used to watch a video. And it became very difficult for me also to compare offerings from competing suppliers. In fact, I remember creating spreadsheets to try to see what my cost would be using my usage pattern among various offerings. Fast forward to a more recent experience. I recently went into a Verizon store for the purpose of adding my daughter's phone to our family plan. The salesperson that I spoke with began by asking me a couple of questions that were directed at me and my needs. They asked me how much I was comfortable spending. They looked at my profile to see what I had historically used, and they asked me questions about what was important to me. They presented me with a couple of simple options that moved away the complexity of how their business works and spoke to me in my terms. They also provided me with several value-added options, such as parental controls, insurance policies on phones in case they were lost or stolen. And I walked out of that experience thinking that they were really trying to understand my needs and offered me a product that was created just for me. This is an example of a company that's become customer-centric. Sometimes people call this the Amazon effect. It's my opinion that this effect is arriving at many industries, and I believe it's arrived in ours. And in order to really grasp it, we've got to stop speaking to customers in terms of kilowatt hours. Nobody has ever woken up and said, how do I go about getting kilowatt hours today? Customers are interested in having solutions and outcomes. They want their home to be cool in the summer, warm in the winter. They want their phone charger to charge and their toaster to make toast. And it's up to us to take all the innovations that are out there and bring those together into comprehensive solutions that we can offer customers that solve their problems. We've got things like smart thermostats, distributed generation, battery storage, microgrids. Duncan is going to speak in a moment about how some of those things are being brought together into innovative products that we can bring to market. But before I pass on to my colleague, I want to answer the question, why now? Why do we need supplier consolidated billing now? The simple fact is, as the chairman mentioned in her comments, many of the pieces that enable this future that we see are already in place. The significant investment in infrastructure through smart meters, the standardization and availability of data, those are key pieces that enable this future. The last remaining piece in our mind is the option to provide supplier consolidated billing so that we can deliver these types of products that are not based on kilowatt hours to market. So with that, I pass to Duncan Stiles.
Good afternoon, and thank you for making time to consider this important issue. My name is Duncan Stiles. I'm the Senior Vice President of Product Development and Strategy for Just Energy Group, Inc. I'm here to talk about product innovation, and let me say this, it starts with customers. As a competitive supplier, our business depends on earning customer loyalty by delivering great experiences. We use a customer-driven innovation approach to deploy new products and services, from initial market research to trials to full-scale rollouts. Choice allows customers to vote on what they like, choosing their supplier, choosing their products. And all customers are different and will make different choices. To drive value for the people of Pennsylvania, we need to get beyond transactional sufficiency in billing and create a resilient platform that will allow innovation and choice. So speaking of products, let's first think about how bills are calculated. I think there's some general agreement in the room that time of use products may be an interesting option to some customers. And if we think about the way that the different suppliers represented here have approached time of use products, we'll see that there are many different types of such products, different time classifications, different day classifications. And in order to bill them, we would require not only multiple different line items to suit these different product structures, but also graphics and other features on the bills to make them properly understood. If we think of a different product type, Just Energy has done testing and launched what we call a flat bill product, which is a product that allows customers to pay a flat monthly amount and take the weather risk out of their electric bills. We've tested this in different ways, including a flat bill that covers only the commodity portion of the bill, as well as a flat bill that covers the entire electric bill, including regulated charges. And we found that overwhelmingly customers prefer the full flat bill. In order to deliver such a product, supplier consolidated billing is necessary. We also see that increased bundling of value-add products and services, such as what Greg mentioned, is becoming increasingly important to customers, and a flexible way to do that, and a way to do that in a differentiated way for each supplier, is to allow the suppliers to make investments in their own billing systems to accommodate such products. I think we also need to think beyond the bill and how charges are calculated to consider things like, what is the content of the bill and how is it delivered to customers? There are increasing possibilities as bills become more digital and customers become more engaged. There may be analytical content they're interested in or interactive content that helps them to better understand their bills. These are things that can be developed and innovated through market testing. In addition, we should think about payment options. Not only would we be committed to continuing to provide flexible payment plans to customers, but Just Energy has also innovated offers such as a pick your bill due date offer for customers, where customers can match the timing of their electric utility payments with their own cash flow. So the innovation really can go beyond how bills are calculated. If we also think about alternatives to supplier consolidated billing, I think we can start by saying our goal is expanded competition, and that requires a simple customer experience and increased supplier awareness. We've evaluated the existing options, and we find them to be inadequate for these purposes. For dual billing, it creates a more complex customer experience. Most people would not choose to get two bills where they can have one. And it also precludes integrated products such as the flat bill product I mentioned. For utility consolidated billing, it's my belief that the distributor billing systems should focus on items that are core to the distributor's business. Supporting innovation will require ongoing systems development based on ongoing development of customer needs. We can't think that today we know all the products that are going to be relevant to customers in the next 20 years. Ongoing investment from the distribution companies would be funded by the ratepayers. ongoing development of billing systems for suppliers will be funded by the suppliers. In addition, trying to create a common distributor-based billing platform that accommodates the needs of all suppliers would be not only complex operationally, but limits innovation and requires all suppliers to agree on a single approach, which limits differentiation and ultimately customer choice and competition. Beyond all these things, sticking to utility consolidated billing prevents a more direct relationship between customers and suppliers through the most basic interaction that each customer has, which is their monthly electric bill. So thank you for considering these points. Please allow us to build on the existing investments that you've made in Pennsylvania's electric market and show you what you can do. I pass it over to my colleague, Tammy Wilson.
Thank you, Duncan. Chairman Brown, Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm just going to take a couple minutes to highlight the economic benefits that we think will come to the state of Pennsylvania with consolidated billing. Clearly, suppliers are interested in growing our customer base and growing the products and services that we sell to our customers. Growth in our businesses translates to growth for Pennsylvania. Growth for the state will be created on a direct basis by the economic activity generated by the suppliers, which will result in generating additional revenue to the state through payroll and income-related taxes. The growth will also be created on an indirect basis by the economic activity generated by our upstream business partners. IGS has sales offices throughout the states in which we operate. Supplier Consolidated Billing will allow for companies like IGS to expand its presence in those states. Additionally, we invest in corporate sponsorships, advertising, and marketing, and support the local communities in which our employees live through our corporate giving initiatives. We invest in those states where we're most successful. Continued growth in non-commodity products and services translates to growth for local contractors. For example, we have home warranty products that we sell to our customer base, and we partner with local contractors to help service those warranty contracts. We also use local contractors to install solar panels on our customers' roofs. You've heard some of the types of the expanded and diversified product offerings that suppliers can provide. Product offerings like prepay, flat bill, time of use, and bundled products, green products, and customized energy plans. I would also add to that list energy efficiency, demand response, smart thermostats, and products bundled with loyalty rewards and home warranties, and products that haven't hit mass market commercialization yet. Products like distributed solar generation and other forms of on-site generation, microgrids, battery storage, and as well as smart home products. These innovative products are not going to come to a marketplace without supplier consolidated billing, and it only makes sense that the rest of the customer's energy be billed along with these energy-related products and services. All this will translate into more customers in the states where we can make these offerings, and that means growth for us as suppliers and growth for the states in which we operate. I thank you again for your time and turn it over to Andreas Varela to talk about operations and implementation. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Good afternoon. My name is Andres Varela. I'm the Director of North American Back Office Operations at Direct Energy. My responsibilities include overseeing all operational activity and transactions between Direct Energy and the various utilities across the company's footprint, including the electronic data interchange, EDI, transactions used for supplier billing. I would like to thank the Commission for holding this En Banc hearing to explore the issue of supplier consolidated billing in Pennsylvania, and thank you also for your support of competitive markets. I'm here today to discuss the operational issues associated with implementing a supplier consolidated billing program here in the Commonwealth. First, I would like to stress that while overcoming operational details and complexities to supplier consolidated billing may seem daunting, the implementation of a successful supplier consolidation billing program, which provides timely, accurate, and educational supplier-provided bills, can be accomplished. Successful implementation of supplier consolidated billing, however, must begin with a Commission order that includes a clear policy, directives on key issues, including supplier qualifications, bad debt management or termination rights, and customer education. The Commission should also include in the order direction for its stakeholders to convene working groups to work out the details to achieve the goals set forth in the order within a specific time frame. Based on my experience in other states, at a minimum, groups should consider the following 3 issues. First, potential rule changes to Chapter 56 to allow for supplier consolidated billing. A current rulemaking to amend Chapter 56 is pending, and NRG has already provided red lines to the Commission, which could serve as a starting point. Second, changes to utility supplier coordination agreements would need to be determined. For example, billing and payment agreements would need to be examined, credit, security requirements, and the templates used for posting would need to be developed. Finally, a group should examine the necessary changes to utility supplier EDI transactions. Roadmaps to achieve these changes exist. In 2000 and 2010, the Electronic Data Exchange Working Group examined the operational considerations associated with supplier consolidated billing and developed work plans for necessary modification. We've also considered these changes and have developed a great diagram, which is on page 38 of the handout, which outlines the various transactions necessary to complete the process. All of these tasks are achievable. With close coordination and cooperation between stakeholders, as well as a clear direction set forth by the Commission, supplier consolidated billing can be implemented in Pennsylvania. And you don't have to take my word for it. This is the view that is shared by at least some of the utilities in this region. As the Commission is likely aware, the Maryland Public Service Commission is also contemplating implementation of supplier consolidated billing. During the Commission's hearing on the issue in February, BGE, PEPCO, and Delmarva jointly highlighted in some detail the Pennsylvania Commission's concerns and reservations regarding supplier consolidated billing that were expressed in response to NRG's Pennsylvania Supplier Consolidated Billing petition. In response to those concerns, the utilities jointly testified that although details would need to be worked through, the issues were implementation details and were not insurmountable. Another example you may be aware of is PPL and PECO already have approved tariff provisions to begin the discussion on supplier coordination agreements. Also, in Texas, a very similar working group model worked through operational and implementation questions when the legislature enacted the law opening the competitive market and removing the utility from the default service function. Working groups and committees were formed to establish the approach, rules, market model, EDI standards to implement, etc. The Commission provided oversight and approval of the committee recommendations. Marketers and the utility ERCOT worked in tandem to ensure a fair and equitable competitive market was established. That included the billing functionality. In sum, we recognize that there are operational issues that need to be resolved to implement supply consolidated billing in Pennsylvania. We believe strongly that working together with the other stakeholders, we can find workable solutions, just like we did in other states such as Georgia, Texas, or the province of Alberta in Canada. That will allow Pennsylvania's retail electricity market to move forward. That will enable suppliers to build long-lasting relationships with and better understand their customers and enable them to deliver innovative energy solutions that their customers desire. Again, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. Now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Mike Stark.
Thank you, Andres. And thank you, Commission, for your time today. We've talked about all of the very good things, which I think hopefully you guys will understand why supplier consolidated billing is so important to us. I wanted to talk to you about something that Chairman Brown brought up at the beginning, which is bad debt management and what that would look like. I'll turn back to what Karen mentioned in her opening statements. Our key thing is a preservation of all current consumer protections. So we will commit to preserving all of those current consumer protections that are in place today. There will be some key differences between what a customer on supplier consolidated billing feels like and what a customer on utility consolidated billing would experience. But from the perspective of what is changing, is really 3 key things that would change. Number 1, the suppliers who are performing supplier consolidated billing will pay for and purchase all of the full utility receivables. So there'll be no POR discount in the reverse direction. We will take responsibility for all utility receivables. At the end of the day, that is not something the consumer has to worry about. It's more in terms of what we would expect to do from a supplier consolidated billing perspective. We then would also be responsible for collecting all charges from customers. So that would be a different experience, obviously, for those customers, but it would be the same type of experience that they have today when they get their utility bill. So all bills will come through the supplier consolidated billing method. And most importantly, I think in terms of the questions, in terms of consumer protection, the termination request would start at the supplier. That's the key difference. But all of the protections that are in place to ensure that those terminations are basically the last resort would remain in place. So all of the notices that will occur, all of the discussions with the customer to ensure that payment plans are discussed, all the appropriate measures to ensure that those lights remain on would remain in place. And all the disconnect notices that the EDC currently performs would also remain in place. For us, what we're trying to do here is build a relationship with the customers, to build the trust with those customers that Duncan mentioned, and also to build the type of relationship that Greg mentioned in terms of what we now have with our cell phone providers. That's what we're looking to do. And in order to do that, we need to make sure that we're treating our customers appropriately. And that's what we would commit to do. So from our perspective, we have innovative products that we can bring to market. We have longer term relationships that we hope that we can gain through these relationships with our customers. But we do still need, unfortunately, that ability to collect bad debt, which, as we know from experience, not only in this industry, but in other industries, does require disconnect power. We have that today with the utilities. We're not asking for anything different than what we have today. We're just asking for a level playing field when it comes to supplier consolidated billing. The key thing for us is to ensure that that power is the last resort. And that's what we would commit to do from a supplier consolidated billing perspective. The other commitment that we've made in this proposal is to ensure that we have the appropriate reporting to all of you from a commission perspective as well as an industry to ensure that that is being managed appropriately, and that if there are issues or concerns that we're discussing those issues and concerns. So our expectation is that because we move to supplier consolidated billing, consumer behavior does not necessarily change when it comes to paying their bills. However, the risk and obviously the receivable component of that now comes onto the supplier. So what we're asking for, again, is simply a level playing field when it comes to payments. The process itself will remain the same. That's the key thing that I would like to call out. So when we think about timing, we think about all of the different associated components in terms of when a customer pays, how long does it take to reconnect. Now that we have gotten to the point where we have smart meters for the most part throughout the state of Pennsylvania, and basically by the end of 2019, we'll be in that position. We expect that we will be able to perform that in a very expeditious manner. In closing, I would just say, number one, supplier consolidated billing is an option, and it's an option that we're asking you to approve for our consumers. Number two, the products and services that we're talking about, those are also an option that the customer can benefit from if we are allowed to have supplier consolidated billing. And lastly, this benefits all, whether or not they choose to be a customer of someone who provides supplier consolidated billing or not. Innovation will benefit all. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. And that concludes